Let's start off with this little introduction paragraph. Jesus had religious reverence, and the Greek word for reverence there means to revere God with anxiety of offending God. And he was heard by God, and the Greek word actually shows us he not only was heard, this is the type of hearing where someone answers what you ask for. So Jesus prayed to God, and God answered him. And God is the God who could save him from death. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7. Let's read that real quick. Hebrews 5, verse 7. In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverence. So God heard and answered him. How did God answer his prayers? He prayed to the God who could save him from death. What answer did God give? He resurrected him. That's good. That's good. What else? I made it really simple with Canaan. He answered no. He still let him die. But also, Matt said he resurrected him. So it's kind of a twofold answer. What'd you say? He was made perfect. He was made a high priest. So the death actually made him better. Even though that feels counterintuitive, but sometimes obeying God makes you better even when you're not saved. Okay. Here are 5 descriptions of a high priest that Jesus is the same as. Write the verse from Hebrews chapter 5 for each of them. Taken from among men. Where do we find that at? Verse 1, for every high priest chosen from among men, is appointed to act on behalf of men in relation to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sin. So verse 1, must have something to offer. Verse 1, served God on behalf of men. Verse 1, I changed men to mankind just so we're not confused. It doesn't matter the sex. Now, must be acquainted with the problems of men. Let's keep reading. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. Because of this, he is obligated to offer sacrifice for his own sins, just as he does for those of the people. So that's verse what? That's verse 2, but there's a difference. I'm skipping ahead to a different question, but let me go ahead and show you. The high priest was acquainted with the problems of men because he did what? He sinned. Jesus was acquainted with the problems of men, but he didn't sin. So there's a difference there. All right? And appointed by God. Let's keep reading. And no one takes this honor for himself, but only when called by God, just as Aaron was. What verse? Verse 4. So every high priest was given an honor of being an official in an office, and who gave that honor to them? God. Just as Aaron was. Now, all the sons of Aaron, it's just inherited. But Jesus was different. He was still given that high priesthood by God, but not because of being a son of Aaron. So you see some similarities and differences between him and the physical high priest. Let's keep reading. So also Christ did not exalt himself to be made a high priest, but was appointed by him, who said, you are my son, today I have begotten you. As he says also in another place, you are a high priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek. We'll pause there. How did Jesus differ from physical high priest, and according to this passage? Physical high priest sinned. Because physical high priest sinned, what did they have to do? They had to offer sacrifices for their sins. All right, did you notice anything else? He was made it directly by God. They were made it by God through Aaron being their father. Anything else did you notice? High priest forever. They were constantly have to replace the high priest because they die. Jesus gets to be once Jesus is the high priest, he's always the high priest. Okay, anything else? All right, What high priestly order is Jesus from? Melchizedek. If you're under the age of 10 and you spell that right on your paper, you get an extra card. I'll give you 2 cards. Okay? I was so proud to see Canaan has a whole binder today of all of his cards. There's also some baseball and football cards in there, which is fun too. What priestly order is Jesus from? Melchizedek. Jesus is also the begotten what of God? Son. So that makes him different than a normal priest. But it makes him the same as something else. And I'm going to skip down to that. Number 7. Melchizedek was 2 things that Jesus was prophesied to also be in Zechariah 6:13. What are those 2 things that Melchizedek and Jesus both are? They're both what? Kings and high priest. See, because Jesus is God's son, he is king. But Jesus is also high priest. No Aaronic priest was ever allowed to be a king. So if you were a priest according to the Old Testament law, you could not be a king. If you were a king according to the Old Testament law, you could not be a priest. Who did the kings have to be from, descended from in the Old Testament? David. Who did the priest have to be descended from? Aaron. So you could never be both. Only Melchizedek and Jesus did that. They're the only 2. All right, let's keep reading. In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. Number 6. How did Jesus learn obedience? Suffering, death. If he had not died on the cross, he would have never become his full potential, which means he would have never been who he was supposed to be. All right. We already answered 7. Let's keep reading. And being made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him, being designated by God a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. About this we have much to say. It's hard to explain since you have become dull of hearing. All right, number 8. Whose fault was it hard to explain the message? Was it Paul's fault, the writer of Hebrews' fault, the listener's fault, or the message's fault? The listeners. The listener didn't want to listen properly. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the basic principles of the oracles of God. You need milk, not solid food. For everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness since he is a child. But solid food is for the mature, for those who have the powers of discernment, trained by constant practice in distinguishing good from evil. The word mature here means reaching the designed end. So according to this passage, what should older Christians be doing? Okay, maturing, and what did you say the second thing? Chance? In the Word. Okay, maturing in the Word. What else? Be a good example for younger Christians and be teachers. Okay. Some two thought questions for you to take home with you. We're not doing these out loud. Just as the word mature means reaching a designed end, the exact same Greek word is used for Jesus, and in English we put perfect. Perfect means reaching the designed end. Jesus' designed purpose as Messiah was his death on the cross. He did not become perfect until he did that. Spend some time and thought this week about what might be my designed end that God created, knitted me for when he made me. So if Jesus was created for the purpose of dying, if he had never died, he would not have been perfect. What might be the reason God made you? Second thought question for you to take home with you. How long have you been a Christian? Number 1. Number 2, by this time, should you be teaching someone else the Bible? Number 3, have you been teaching the basics of the Bible to someone else yet? Because when we become mature, what are we supposed to do? Teach others. If we are an older Christian and we are not teaching others, then we are not mature, even though, just like a license tells you someone's age, but it doesn't show you their maturity. Just because we are Christians that have been Christians for 20-something years doesn't mean we're mature. So ask yourself, how long have I been a Christian? Have I been a Christian long enough I should be mature? And have I been teaching people? Thank you for your time.